Let's now look at an example of message-driven bean. The example that we have out here is we have a client which calls a business method on a stateless session bean. The stateless session bean business method publishes a message. We are using a publish subscriber model. Publishes a message to a topic. The message driven bean is a listener for the topic. It receives the message from the topic and displays. So with this as a background, let us now look at the stateless session bean. We have publisher home, which is a home interface. In this interface, we have derived it from EJB home and declared a create method, which is a argumentless, which is a no argument create method, returns a publisher type of object. Publisher is a remote interface derived from EJB object. It declares a method called publish news. The bean class implements a session bean which declares a session context variable, topic connection, topic variables, and it also declares a string array. Here we have a set session context which sets the session context variable with the value, and we have a EJB create method. This is a session bean. In the EJB create method, how many times do we want to actually get the connection, topic and all this? Only once. So we define all this into our EJB create method. In the EJB create method, we look up for the topic name by specifying JMS / topic name. Now this is nothing but a EJB ref name, which will be specified in EJB jar.xml file for the session tag. And in the WebLogic EJB jar.xml, this resource ref name will be mapped to the actual JNDI name of the topic. Then we look up for the connection factory. Again, JMS topic connection factory is again a resource ref name, which is mapped to a JNDI name of the topic connection factory. Using the factory, create a topic connection. So now you got the connection factory, the topic and the connection object. We have the publish news method, which creates a session object which is transacted and auto acknowledged. Creates a publisher for the topic, creates a text message object. Using the message object, set the text message. We are also setting the string property for the message and then publishing the message. If there is any exception during this process, remember this is a transacted set of messages, so we are calling set rollback only, and the transaction therefore we are handling using CMT here. The EJB remove method closes the connection. This is your session bean. Now let's look at the client. The client creates an initial context object, looks up for the JNDI name, downcats the object to the home interface type, which is publisher home, calls the create method, getting the remote object type, and then invokes the publish news method and finally removes the object. The message driven bean implements the message driven bean interface and the message listener interface. The message driven context is declared and the context variable for the JNDI is also declared. We have set message driven context, which sets the message driven context object variable. We have the EJB create method and EJB remove method, which are callback methods from message driven bean interface, which we are implementing as just to write a SOP. The on message method of the message listener is implemented to take the message object. We check whether that message is a text message. If so, downcast it to a text message and display the text to the system console. Otherwise, if it's not a text message, we are just displaying the name of the class. If any exceptions, we are rolling back in the transaction. This is the message driven bean. If at all this message driven bean has to send a message to a destination object, it has to be done in this on message method. Now notice here, to receive a message, we never defined a factory object, looked up for the factory object, nor looked up for the destination object. So if you notice in this message driven bean, we have not written any JMS code, that is getting the connection factory, the session, the connection, creating a subscriber, or even the destination object. How is this particular message driven bean a listener for a particular topic? When we declare this message driven bean in our ejbjar.xml file, we will be specifying the connection factory and the destination object as a resource ref for this particular bean. So it will create this bean as a listener to that particular destination object specified with the factory. But if this message driven bean had to send a message, then in the on message method we need to write the JMS code by getting the connection factory, looking up for the connection factory, getting the connection, the session, the destination object, and then publish the message. When you look up for the connection factory in the destination object, using the JMS code when you are sending a message from the message driven bean, you will specify the resource ref name, and therefore in your message driven tag in ejbjar.xml you will have a resource ref tag which will specify the resource ref name, and in WebLogic ejbjar.xml you will have the resource ref name mapped to a JNDI name. So this is how you write a message driven bean. Now let us look at one more thing out here in terms of how to configure the connection pool and the data source at the server. Now what you do is, once your server is running, you go to the administrative console. It will ask you for username, password. Specify the username and password. You get the console screen. Here in services, if you click, you have JDBC. Under that you have connection pools and data sources. So if you select the connection pool, and if you look at this demo pool, demo XA pool and Oracle pool, each of them are pointing to a particular database with a username, password, a driver class, and the connection URL. So for example, Oracle pool specifies the URL to a thin driver, and it specifies Oracle driver class with username as Scott. if you look at the data sources, if we look at example data source demo pool, the JNDI name for this is examples-data source-demo pool. This is exactly what we actually mapped in our WebLogic EJB jar.xml file for bean managed persistence with the JNDI name mapped to a resource ref name, which was JDBC/demo pool. This particular JNDI name is mapped to a pool name called demo pool, and demo pool is pointing to JDBC universal driver as a driver class with a URL for the point-based server, database server. So if you want to create your own connection pool, what you do is you specify, rather you click at connection pools, it will ask you to configure a new JDBC connection pool, select that, select the database type, let us assume you want for Oracle, specify which driver you want for Oracle, let us say Oracle type 4 driver, select continue, specify the database name, the host name that is here in the database name, specify the DSN name, the database instance name, host name would be the name of the machine where the server is running, and the username, password. When you click it continue, it will create a connection pool object, and then select the data source to create a data source for your connection pool. Here you select configure a new JDBC data source. It will ask you for a JNDI name, specify whatever the JNDI name you want here, click it continue. It will ask you to map to a particular pool. Now select the pool that you created and say continue, and it will ask you which server you want to deploy it at, select that, and therefore it creates a data source. This ends with EJB. Of course, there are a lot more concepts available in EJB, especially in terms of security.